Good morning and welcome to Veterans Heartbeat on the Pulse of the Veteran, where we discuss issues of health, happiness, opportunity, and well-being of interest to the veteran community, their families, and the community who honors them.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Veterans Heartbeat, brought to you by River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. My name is Jason Zencraft. My co-host Ed Lasovsky is here with me, and he is the Executive Director of River. We welcome you to a weekly wide-ranging discussion of issues, events, opportunities, and needs in our veteran community. Morning, Ed. How you doing?
Morning, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing good. As said before, we are also sponsored by River, who offer many services to veterans, such as free weekly vestibular disorder testing and educational programs that focus on veterans helping veterans.
So this morning, I want to let all of our listeners know that we have a new sponsor. Farside Signs will be sponsoring Veterans Heartbeat. I really think it's going to be a good match. They do some outstanding graphic work on vehicles, and so we'll be getting more into that later on. But I also want to introduce, and we had some personnel movement at the Institute. Jason and I have a board of directors that we went to. I will still retain the presidency, but we hired an executive director, Connor Smith. Good morning, Connor.
Morning, Ed. How's it going?
Good. So Connor will be taking over the day-to-day oversight, and Jason and I will be still developing new programs for the veterans out there. Connor, you want to give a little of your background?
Sure, yeah. I'm a Missoula native, born and raised here. Went to the university. I was on the football team for a few years. It was a great experience. Got to go to Chattanooga twice. Got my degree in 2014 in accounting. I've done bookkeeping, some tax work, a little bit of audit work, before really falling into line with River.
Yeah, we've needed Connor's skills. We're good at what we do, and like our guest coming up will tell you, hire the people that know what they're doing because you dang well can't do it all yourself. We're real excited about having Connor at the Institute. He's straightened out a lot of my mess with bookkeeping because I don't know what I'm doing. But between him and our accountant, I think the Institute's going to be fine. I think we're very financially responsible and we're very healthy. Am I correct in that assumption?
It's looking good. It was a bit messy at first, but I'm excited to be on and keep doing all the good things that we can do.
So this morning on Veterans Heartbeat, we will be talking a little bit with Tim O'Leary from Kettle House. Now, a lot of veterans out there are thinking, I want to start a business. I want to make something out of myself. I don't want to just work as a wage slave. And we've encouraged that at the Rural Institute. So good morning, Tim. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for your call, Ed.
Well, I appreciate you talking to the veterans and us this morning. So you started Kettle House about how many years ago?
22 years ago in 1995, and it was on Labor Day weekend.
So you remember that day pretty well. I remember at a Montana Marketing Symposium that we met you at, that you were talking about how you were going to can beer, even if it was a craft beer, because, damn it, you were going down the river with that beer. You remember that story?
Oh, yeah. And it took us quite a long time in business to get to that point. That was in 2006 when we started canning our beer. But, growing up in Helena and camping and fishing and floating, it's nice to have a cold one on the river and pull over and camp and have a cold one. And, glass isn't allowed on most rivers now. And so that made it hard for us to take our beer down on our trips. So we saw some technology that came around geared toward small brewers. Saw some other brewers in the country take advantages of it, watch their success, and put ourselves in a position to at least get some product in the cans. And we really didn't care if it was a big commercial success. We figured we could talk enough of our friends and neighbors into buying the beer, to help pay for the overhead. But but it really did take off. There was an unfilled need. People do want to craft beer in a can when they go out and about in the great Montana outdoors.
So what put you into being into the brewery business?
Well, we grew up, born and raised in Helena, and you kind of get spoiled, obviously, growing up in the Big Sky State. Ended up getting our first jobs in Colorado, and you don't have to wait in a ski line too long to realize what you're missing back in Montana. We would go, skiing and get in a parking lot jam, traffic jam, and on the freeway because so many other people had the same idea. So we were looking for opportunities at home, and I grew up where there wasn't a lot of opportunity and a lot of jobs. I would walk around Helena trying to knock on doors at construction companies and see if they needed help, and they didn't. There wasn't much going on, and the jobs they had were filled by people 10 years older than me, and they were trying to support a family on them. So we took our first jobs in Colorado and yearned to come home and thought that maybe the best way to do that is to start our own business. And we saw a few ideas. One of them was actually the Great Harvest franchise idea. We saw that. We knew it was a Montana company, and we thought maybe we could try that, but it seemed like that was out of our reach financially. And so we also saw this brewery idea where people could brew their own beer in a small setting, kind of like a home brewery away from home, and thought that maybe we could bring that to Missoula. That actually wasn't such a great idea, but in the journey of making that happen, we became a brewery in a small tap room, and just kind of hung on. It wasn't like it is now. A new brewery opens up and everybody flocks to it. People didn't know how to treat us back then, and we couldn't sell beer on site, so we had to give it away. And the people that came in were able to brew their beer one day, come back 2 weeks later, and bottle their beer, and they were able to sample their bottles at that time. But it was a long journey, and I feel like we've owned one company, but we've had 3 different businesses in the last 22 years because of the way our focus has changed.
So that's one of the keys to success in a small business is hanging on and putting the time in, right?
Yeah, I have one claim to fame, and that's that I can take a beating and not give up. I don't take credit for some of the great ideas like Cold Smoke, and the recipe for that beer was a collaborative effort, but the name for that came from a distributor rep in Bozeman. We were trying to sell them some beer down there at the ski area, and it didn't have a name that they liked, and so the distributor said, you should name a beer Cold Smoke and make it a dark winter ale. I said, I got the perfect beer for that. We changed the name of our big pipe Scotch ale to Cold Smoke, and it happened to be a beer that people really liked. And with that name and the flavor profile, it really took off. So the keys that I've learned is you got to listen to people and be open to their suggestions, but you can't chase every lead. One of the things that really helped us was defining our marketing message. We used to have beer names that range from Thistledew ESB to Big Pipe Scotch Ale and Whoa Doggy Pale Ale, and they were just kind of grabbed from here, there, and everywhere. And I went to a marketing seminar for manufacturers that really thing I took home from that is you've got to have an identity. And for me, that meant an identity that I can believe in. It wasn't contrived. So I grew up skiing and fishing and camping, and so our beers took on a theme of recreational Montana pursuits. So we listened. That's something you got to do. You have to fill a need. You can't. Some people can invent a technology or product that creates a need, but it's very difficult to have an idea for a business that You think it might be a great idea, but it doesn't fill the need of a customer out there. So, yeah, I can hang in there and not quit, but generally it's listening to your customer that's going to keep you in the game.
That, and I'll bet you it took many hours of your growing pains where you were spending 80, 100 hours a week trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, here in Montana, we work to live. You know, if I wanted to live to work, I would have stayed in the other markets or bigger cities doing other pursuits. So it doesn't do anybody any good in your organization if you're grumpy, unhappy, and miserable. So you can do the 80-hour work weeks, at least this is in my case. You can do that for a while, but if you don't solve that and get good people doing some of those chores that they're going to be better at than you, it's a recipe for disaster. So I'm not a workaholic. I do what I need to do, and like I said, I've certainly put those hours in, but I knew all along that wasn't how I wanted our business to be. So we hire good people. We try to empower them to make decisions. And, you know, Montana's a great place to live, and if you're not out there enjoying it, life ain't worth it.
So you've got a new amphitheater.
That's an exciting development. When we bought the property in Bonner to put our new canning and production facility, we wanted some extra space because we knew that if we didn't grow the business, somebody would eventually. Hopefully, you know, this business stays around for multiple decades, and I'm not going to live forever. So we needed expansion room, and we were going to put our brewery on a spot on site, and we were doing some structural fill, augering or drilling to make sure the building wouldn't sink. And they said, oh, this area is basically backfilled with sawdust and logs and concrete blocks, and it was a place we couldn't build on. So luckily, we moved our building back a few hundred feet, and we knew that this area had at once been a gully or a wash or an eddy that the previous, you know, tenants, the mill from way back, it started in the 1890s, I believe. They just filled that gully in with their wood waste and stuff, and so my wife Susie kind of had grand designs on the whole property. We think about what we could do. We could put a river access there. We could put a park there or something, and the amphitheater was like the wildest idea that maybe that could happen when we win the lottery or something. And I happened to run into Nick Chakota at the Top Hat in the Wilma, and he had mentioned that he was looking for an outdoor venue. So I said, come on out to Bonner. Got a nice flat piece of ground where we can't put a building. And he did. We were out there standing there. I said, you know, Susie thinks this could be like an amphitheater if we dug this thing out. And that really resonated with him, and he came back about 6 weeks later, and he started digging. And I'm telling you, that meeting was probably mid-October of 2016, and the first concert was 2017, July 18th or something like that with Lyle Lovett. I can't believe what Nick and his team accomplished in that amount of time and the amazing job they did on that amphitheater. So we are not partners with Nick. We have a relationship where he leases the ground in front of our brewery. We're able to get the naming rights for the venue, and we're also able to provide him with nice, fresh beer. And he's the expert in all things music and bands, and the best is yet to come out there. I tell you what, it's a really unique experience and a beautiful venue. We couldn't be more thrilled to have it and have an opportunity to showcase our beers there.
You know, you mentioned fresh beer. I just got back from Ireland a couple months ago, and I went to the Guinness House. And I was excited to taste Guinness that was going to be fresh. And it wasn't fresh. And it was disappointing.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. People for years were telling me, you got to taste the Guinness in Ireland. And I thought, it's just because you're there, you're going to like it better. My first Guinness, I have to say, I was a little disappointed. But over the week, I kept practicing and finding more Guinness, and I did find the fresh stuff. And I wasn't disappointed. In fact, I was very amazed how much of a difference that there can be in one beer just because of the freshness. And, that's one thing about Montana now. There's so many breweries. You're guaranteed to get a nice, fresh beer wherever you go. And that's a real luxury that we have living in this age with all these craft breweries.
So you're getting pretty big. I've seen Cold Smoke all over the U.S. I just came back from Chicago. Jason's still there. And there was Cold Smoke.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that's news. I know people smuggle it out of the great state of Montana. We don't have any distribution lined up with any distributors outside of Montana. So we were, since 2006, we could only keep up with Western Montana. And we built a new plant. It came online in January of this year. We were able to open up Billings. And yet, even in the last 5-10 years, people have been bootlegging Cold Smoke to Billings, And I use bootlegging. They were doing it legally, but so I use that term loosely. But in the state of Montana, for us, it's best to work with a distributor to get our products to market. So that's interesting. We haven't, had any partnerships yet. But the fact that they're getting it out there, that really says something about Cold Smoke, and I appreciate hearing that.
So tell me, how do you create a beer? I mean, the flavors, the different flavors. Are you coming up with something unique besides Cold Smoke?
Yeah, we have a great team. Our head brewer, T3, we have 3 Tims now. I'm T0. T2 is our lead brewer at the South Side Brewery, where we have a lot of fun, creative beers that we put out. Same with our K2 location on Orange Street. Corey Regini is our lead brewer there. Tim Mason is T3, and he comes to us from some other breweries out of state. Lagunitas he worked at Revolution. So he's got a huge network of fellow brewers and also a huge experience with other breweries and their brewing styles. And, it's amazing all the different flavors you can get from barley, hops, water, and yeast. And you can change the variety of yeast and use everything else the same, and you get a completely different beer. So that's what I really like about, my job in our industry is it's very exciting. I learn every day. I'll never be an expert because there's always somebody that knows something more about the beer industry than I do. It's really fun and exciting, and then we're fortunate with our 2 taproom breweries to come up with those unique beers that may, be the next Cold Smoke, or it may be something that really augments our lineup. We played around with this new style, which is a New England style IPA. It literally looks almost like a vanilla milkshake, and it's hoppy. It's really unique flavors. It's just what's fun about beer. You can really be creative and come up with a lot of different flavors. So
really what I'm getting from you, Tim, is if you're going to go into business with something you love.
Yeah, although I'll tell you this, don't turn something you love into your business, because at the end of the day, it's a business and you got to make business decisions. Some people can do that effectively. For me, in my case, it ends up becoming a psychological shift in your mind where you say, there's only so much time I'm going to spend doing something I love and not make any money at it. And our business didn't make any money for a lot of years. And luckily my wife had a job and was able to pay our benefits and such. So people would tell me, oh, you must love doing what you love. And I said, I did, but if it doesn't pay you something back, it becomes almost
hobby.
Well, it's not even a hobby. It's a life sentence or a jail sentence. And so I bring that up, that people are realistic with their expectations. And the first thing that I tell people and I get a lot of people ask me about starting a business or a brewery, they say, well, what do you want out of it? Do you want to spend your time at home? Do you want freedom? Do you want a big paycheck? Now build your business around that end goal. It's not enough to say, I love doing this and I'm going to go, open a business because of that. It's, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to work a lot? Then, almost any business can fill that need. Do you need a big paycheck? Then that's going to take you in a different direction as well. It helps that you have a passion for the subject, but you can build passion into any business if you care, if you're challenged by problems and problem solving. And I think that's more of what I get out of it now, is I like to see our staff succeed and empower them to make decisions and solve problems. And I like tweaking things, and that's what I get out of the business. And I have set it up so that I can take time and be with my family. So, yes, passion and what you love is important, but if there is no need in your passion, I'd love to get paid to ski, all year long. I love snow skiing or fish or hunt. But if that's not filling a need that somebody else is willing to pay for, then your passion is useless in that equation.
So the one big piece of advice to walk away from is figure out which way you want to be with your life.
Yeah, so identify a need that the market has that you can fill better than anybody else. And make sure that need in that process or that activity is not going to kill you, is not going to make you bitter, is not going to, ruin your marriage or ruin whatever your relationships are.
Mm-hmm. Good advice, Tim.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, I say this a lot. People say, oh, you're a success or whatever, and I know the inside story, and success is a definition that everybody has in their own minds. I tell people, determine what your level of success is. It might be more time with your kids. It might be a big paycheck. It might be a house or whatever it is, and go after that. But you kind of always have to reconnect with that thought. Is this really fulfilling? Is this level of success worth it? And if you can define that first, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache down the road, because you might start out by saying, I want to be a gazillionaire by the time I'm 40, and I think this business is going to get me there. But the process that business takes and the life that business takes on of its own, you may not have the love or the skill for all the little administrative things that you need to do to be successful. And if you can't give up some of that power or the decision-making for those things, get the smart people on board. Pay them to do those things that you're not good at, and check your ego at the door. It's just going to be tough. And I guess that's mostly how I would end it, is there's more to life than a paycheck or a house or some accolades. It's trying to align those things up to where you go to work every day and you have a challenge and you like the people you're with, and you're making some kind of progress. I'd be happy to talk with anybody that might have more questions or specific, instances of business they're in. I'm not an expert, but, sometimes it's just really helpful to hear another business owner and the problems that they have. You realize you have those too, and just by talking about it, you feel better going home, and you feel like you get a little boost of energy, and you can go back to work that day and try to attack that problem from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I've certainly used people like Charlie Beaton, who started the Big Dipper, a friend of mine from Helena. We get together every now and then, and we compare notes. Other, small business owners, other brewers in the state. It's really helpful to open up, and a big thing is you kind of become a little bit isolated as a business owner because you don't have a boss to go say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or you don't. Some people, like we didn't have a board of directors to throw ideas off of. Go reach out, find that network, and don't be afraid to talk, because that's the only way that you're going to get through some of these situations you'll be in business.
Well, I sure appreciate the time you spent with us this morning.
Yeah. Thank you for calling, and appreciate the opportunity.
We'll have to sit down and have a cold smoke on the river.
Sounds awesome. Can't wait.
Thanks, Tim.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for listening to Veterans Heartbeat. We would not be able to bring it to you without all the support of the listeners. Thank you to our main sponsor, River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research, who have an array of services such as veterans-focused education, a free vestibular disorder clinic, and many more services. Check them out on Facebook or on the web at riverofchange.org. Lastly, we would like to show our appreciation to all of our veterans. Thank you for serving our country and keeping it safe.